it's just what we knew. And we had this little NHRA stalker cam that I had, and we stuck that in there, and we knew it would make more power, so we put bigger fuel injectors, and they put it together in about a day and a half, 2 days, and put it on the dyno, and we started running. And we could run tests, and we could get it up to about 352 horsepower, or 353. I don't remember the exact number, but it was astonishing because we tried a bunch of different things, and we had it making 500 foot-pounds of torque, and we would just take the torque curve and just jam it straight up, and it would come down faster. And if you took boost out of it, we started out running 16 pounds, then 17 pounds, 18. We ran 24 pounds boost in this thing, and we'd take the torque curve straight up, and it was straight down. And every one of those horsepower curves, they come right to one point, 352 horsepower. You could not get over that. And we'd been up in the 320s, 330s before, but we never got that far. We never had a reason to, you know. And so we're just kind of stymied. We looked at it, and Beitzel thought if we went and ran, we could run maybe 160 miles an hour. He didn't think that was fast enough. And you ever heard of Mr. Detweiler, the Buick guy? Okay, well, I talked to him, and I used to work with him too. And he worked with Buick, and when he ran NHRA stuff at the beginning, he worked with Mr. Clark. And so I called him up, and he says, well, the turbo out exhaust he says, we found that was quite restrictive. He even sent us a set of headers, 3-into-1, real nice stuff. We put that on there, he overnighted it, and it didn't do anything. And he said, we found the turbo out. On the outside, the turbo is kind of restricted. You might want to do something there. So I even found my original drawing here, and we took a look at it, and I got Mr. Van Auken, the fabricator. We took one of the turbo housings, how it comes out, it turns a square angle and comes down. We took it, we bored a hole right in the end of it, put a 2.5-inch pipe in it, and he brazed it in there. And then we bent it around, and we took it and we put it back on the dyno. Instant. We had 390 horse. It was just boom right there. And then we still didn't have enough fuel, so we had to put bigger injectors in it. And I still have the chart, the dyno chart with me here. And we made 480 foot-pounds of torque and made 403 horse. And we're getting down it. You know, we only got 2 weeks to do this. So this is about into the 5th or 6th day. So we said, we got to put it in a car. And they didn't want to put it in a regular car. It had to have a roll cage and all this. They didn't have time to build one, so they took a road racing car and they painted it white overnight. It looked like you ran it through Earl Shive, you know, or something. But it was fast. This was not refinement. This was, you know, we're under the gun here. And they put it in there, and they wanted to run with stick shift. And so, okay, we put your stick in there, and we dropped this engine in, and we were supposed to leave Monday morning to go out. It was out in the West Coast at a big track out there. I don't know what the name of the track was, but it was 6 miles around. Nissan test track, and Motor Trend's there. So Beitzel gets the idea, we ought to test this thing first before we just drive it on the street. So we came down, the biggest track we could get was down in Ohio Research Test Facility. I think it's in TRC. Yes, it's in, from here, that's right. Yeah, it's up here in the middle of Ohio, not too far from here. And so we got so much, and go signs the check to rent the track. We go down there, and Beitzel's going to drive. So he drives. He's a pretty good road racer too. So we made a few laps, you know, we're getting up to speed. He said, now I'm going to see what we're going to do. So we checked everything out. He goes out and he makes a warm-up lap. And the thing is, this Nissan track, they knew was, and you know how Indy 500 and Daytona and all of them, they run counterclockwise. Well, this place ran clockwise. So he says, I'm going to run it clockwise, see what we got. So he goes down there, goes in the turn, and it's like Talladega. I mean, you could run 200 miles an hour easy on this thing. And so he goes out there, and it kind of went behind the trees. It's 6 miles around, so you can't see everything. And we heard it going down the back straightaway, and then all of a sudden, boom, and see the cloud of smoke. Oh, that doesn't look good. And finally, here he comes putting back in the pits, blue smoke. This is not good. So we raised the hood, and we looked all over and pulled some plugs out, and number 5 cylinder. It's got oil and bad, you know, and this doesn't say, well, we're going home. So they loaded up in the truck, and they went back to Pass. This was on Saturday about noon. So we get back there, and he says, come back down Sunday, and so they worked all night, and by that time I got down there Sunday morning, Billy's got the engine all apart, and looking in there, and we got a hole in number 5 piston about the size of a quarter. And one of the things I was talking about, the PCV system in the regular Grand National Regals, that they used to suck oil into the front, into the The compressor housing go through the intercooler and back right into the throttle body. Well, I knew that, and that's why we had it on the front wheel drive heads. We had it over here, up in the side, and it worked really good. We never had one trouble with that, and now we're going the other way. And what it did is stack the oil up in the rocker cover right up here, and it got so full, and we're running so hard, there was a depression in that tube, and it sucked the oil right in here, right in. And since it's going this way, it went straight in the intake manifold, right to the back cylinder on the outside. And oil is very detonation prone, and it just detonated. It was like running 87 octane fuel in it. And so we thought about it and says, well, you know, it doesn't look hurt. We got a couple extra pistons, so we had it all apart and had Billy stick it in the hole, and we honed it and just fuzz honed a couple of them, put it back together. We put all the other 5 pistons and rods. We put one new rod and piston in this corner, put it back together, and put it in the car. And Beitzel says, well, we still got time to make it. And so they went down to TRC, I think it was on Monday, or was it Tuesday?
Both.
Okay,
Because they couldn't
both.
get it to run.
Oh, okay, so they had trouble. And I didn't go that day because I'm back in the engine plant. And so they got it to run pretty good. I think they got it to run 160 something. They could go all the way around. So they said, well, what the heck? You know, Mr. Gold says, let's just send it anyway, because it's as good as we have. We don't have time to fool with this thing anymore. So they went out there, and they did it, what was it, Friday? They go out there Friday, and they had some warm-up laps, and they started. So I think Rich Anderson, the calibrator, he had different problems, and they made it richer to make sure. So he starts out rich, and it ran like 160, but the thing was so rich it would stumble. He couldn't hardly get it running. And then he leaned it out and put the next chip in. By the end of the day, what they run, 170 something?
176
Whatever it was pretty fast. Well, it was enough to get the ire. The Corvette people were there. They had the L98 Corvette, they had a road racing Corvette, and then they had a ZR1, and we beat them all. And we beat a Porsche. We beat a Ferrari. We beat some of these other people. And they were thinking, you know, these guys got nitrous in it, or they're cheating, or they're doing something. And so the next day, they drag out their real road race car, and it finally beat us. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't you guys run over 180 miles an hour?
181.
181, and they ran they ran many laps, and I think they counted up, we ran 36 miles at over 180 when they got done adding it all up. And never hurt anything.
The only one that drove to and from the track. Yeah. The only one that drove to and from the track. And I still got the magazine from Road and Track.
That was a stick shift car?
I managed to abscond with 2 6-speed ZF gearboxes out of the Corvette. And one went to Lingenfelder and the other one went in that car. And
That worked well?
yeah, but 0 to 60s weren't any better than a stock car because every time you shifted, you lost boost. The top end was there, but the other interesting part of that car that Bill wasn't involved in was the fact that I spent 3 all-nighters on that car because every time you took it to TRC, it wouldn't run. And I was busy putting the camera in the real pace car at the same time. So I was trying to work on that, and then I worked on this thing at night and changing all sorts of sensors and stuff. And it turns out it was the calibration that was the problem all along. But a couple of interesting things for you is the nose looks stock, but the first time it went 160, the stock intercooler shroud ended up on the ground because it was taking in so much air, it just bent the whole thing onto the ground. The other fun thing we had was at 160 plus, the whole nose of the car would cave in. You know, there's a plastic assembly behind it, so the whole thing would cave in. So that nose is actually fiberglass off for road race cars. The intercooler duct is now made out of metal. Dan Van Auken again made the whole thing out of metal, and then he put a pipe into either side of it, took out the fog lights, and then there's a duct that runs from the fog lights up into the intercooler as well. That car was one of the first GM cars with Brembo brakes on it, and it also has Youngblood wheels that were extremely light. So even though the wheels are gold and silver, they were like $1,800 a piece, even back then. Get the next one.
Oh, there's
There was an article, I think it was in Pontiac magazine or Popular Hot Riding or something, and there's a picture of it that they had setting in front of the grandstands, the Indy 500, and they called it White Heat. And I always thought that was pretty pro, statement about what these cars were, and that's what I called this car, really. That was the real white heat. So we could bring it when we wanted to, so.
Why GM didn't sell it?
Well, I actually, I don't know, I thought they auctioned it off, but I saw it down to the GM Powertrain tent at the Woodward Dream Cruise here about 3 or 4 years ago. One other thing that I did to it, after we sucked all that oil in there, I went back down to Buick Engineering on Monday morning, and I got some of our very talented metal fabricators to make me a oil separator. We made it in a can. It was about this long, about that big round, and you put 4 or 5 Labradors in it. And what it would do, we couldn't stop it from pulling the oil up in there, but you can make 4 or 5 laps in it, and you bring it in, and we had a drain plug on the bottom of it. We put a little cup underneath it. We drain about half a quart of oil out of it, put it back in the engine, and she'd go 3 or 4 or 5 laps. And that's how we fixed it. And that's still on that car. I saw that there. So that's how we fixed that. But, you know, I had a lot of help. And people that down in engineering would help me under the table and things of that. So it wasn't just there was many people that helped do that. But I think the Corvette group didn't like that a bit. Their real race car, their best stuff they had would beat it. And with a little V6 Buick engine, I don't think they care for that too much. So.
But there's growth.
Oh, that's right. They never did. They couldn't run. I think we had to go out and run 1 warm-up lap, a real lap, and then you had to cool down. You had to make all 3 or something like that. You had to make 3 laps and then come in. And they couldn't make 3 laps in any of their Corvettes. They couldn't. They had to keep having trouble. So that's part of the testament of pretty much what you're driving right now.